Shalom, welcome to Light to the Nations. We're studying about the Menorah in Beit Habechira, chapter 3, and in Halacha Zayin, in the 7th entry in the 3rd chapter of Maimonides, Laws of the Chosen House, the Rambam tells us, Shivat Knei HaMenorah me'akvin ze et ze, and this, by the way, is actually the expression of the Mishnah in Tractate Menachot. Shivat Knei HaMenorah me'akvin ze et ze, the 7 branches of the menorah impede each other. V'shivat neroteha me'akvin ze et ze, as do the 7 lamps. They also impede each other. Bein shayita shel zahav, bein shayita shel shar minei matachot. Whether a menorah is constructed of gold or any other metal, these two features, that there must be 7 branches and that there must be 7 lamps atop these branches, these two features are intrinsically imperative. Any lacking thereof will prevent the menorah from being kosher. And furthermore, all 7 branches me'akev each other. In other words, if you would have a menorah of 6 branches, a menorah of 8 branches. If you would have a menorah where one of the branches, for whatever reason, would not have been made in a kosher way, so too, if any of these branches are not topped with the proper lamp holding the proper amount of oil, then the one detail lacking would be enough to render the entire menorah unfit. Again, in the expression of the Mishnah, which is adopted here by Maimonides, the 7 branches of the menorah impede each other, as do the 7 lamps of the menorah, whether or not this menorah was made out of gold or out of any other metal. Therefore, what we understand now, which we've mentioned before, but now we can state it very clearly, as Maimonides puts here, the branches and the lamps, the nerot, are totally intrinsic in the construction of a menorah, and their number is obligatory, whether or not the menorah is gold or any other metal, and any lacking thereof would render the menorah unfit. V'chol hanerot kfuim bakanim, and then Maimonides again states all of these lamps are fixed, are set in the branches. And as Rashi explains on that Mishnah in Masechet Menachot, in Tractate Menachot, Rashi's language is that at the top of each one of the branches there is what's called in Hebrew a ner, which, as you may know, literally means candle. We call these the nerot, the candles of the menorah, but they're actually, as Rashi explains, ke'en bazich, they are like a cup, like a container into which the oil and the wicks are placed. The language of the Mishnah does in fact imply that any metal at all would be affected by this ruling, that the branches and the lamps would impede each other. But, and again, this just for the sake of clarity, remember, what we're adding is that when it comes to a menorah of gold, then the aspect of it being one piece, the aspect of it being constructed of one whole kikar, a talent, and also the aspect of the decorations, those things would also be li'ikuva. They would be something that would cause the kashrut, the validity of the menorah, to be impeded. So again, the main thing here that I want to stress regarding the menorah at this point, because I think it's something that most people are not aware of and haven't thought about too deeply, these vessels that contain the oil and the wicks, they are, again, as we mentioned the last time we were together, they are made out of the same kikar, out of the same talent of gold as the menorah. They are, for all practical purpose, part and parcel of the menorah itself, because they are mounted, although they are detachable, they are mounted on the tops of the branches, but they are in fact not the same piece as the menorah itself. And therefore, again, here we come now to halacha chet, the 8th halacha. Maimonides states, Sheshet hanerot hakfuim b'sheshet hakanim hayotzim min hamenorah. The 6 lamps, the 6 nerot, candles, as it were, the 6 lamps which are fixed, kvuim. Kavua means it's set, it's established, it's firm. The 6 nerot, lamps that are set in the 6 branches, go out from the menorah. Because again, and this is an important concept, the menorah itself, the word menorah, as the Torah uses it, is a reference to the central branch, the central stem, the central part of the structure of the menorah. And then the kanim, the branches, are those that come out from this central stalk or stem. So here in Halacha Chet, Maimonides states the 6 nerot, the 6 lamps which are set in the 6 branches that come out from the menorah, that extend from the central shaft, kulan pneihem laner ha'emtzai sha'al knei hamenorah. They all face the central lamp which is upon the branches of the menorah. So picture this, in other words, you have the menorah, 7 lights, 7 lamps, the central stalk, which is called menorah, and the 6 branches that come out, 3 from each side. These branches, the kanim, the branches that come out from the sides of the central lamp, all of their wicks face towards the central lamp. They are drawn towards the central lamp. They are fixed in such a way that they are facing the central lamp. V'zeh haner ha'emtzai, and the central lamp itself, panav keneged kodesh hakodoshim. It is facing the Holy of Holies, v'hu hanikra ner maravi. And it is this central lamp which is referred to in the Holy Writings as the Western Flame. And as we'll see later when we study about the process of the lighting of the menorah and the what's called the improving, the hatava of the lamps, changing the wicks and changing the oil, this phrase, the Western Flame, is significant in halachic work. So we have the menorah with the 7 lights. The central flame, according to what Maimonides is telling us here, is that which is called the Ner Maravi, the Western Flame. It is facing the Holy of Holies. And all of the other flames, 3 on each side, are facing it. So, Maimonides later on, a little bit later on, in the 12th halacha in this very chapter, tells us that the menorah is to be placed, not everyone agrees with this, but he tells us that the menorah is to be placed in the sanctuary. Its place is between north and south in the sanctuary, and thus this central flame is actually facing towards the west, the direction of the west. And according to Maimonides, actually, in his opinion, the reason that this central flame is called the Western Flame is because its wick is facing towards the west. The Talmud in Tractate Megillah states the Western Flame is facing the Shekhinah, the divine presence. And there is a concept in the mystical teachings of our sages, Shekhinah b'ma'arav, that the divine presence is in the west. And if we look at the Holy Temple, we see that the Holy of Holies is in the west, and the middle flame is to be directed towards the Shekhinah, the divine presence, the other flames towards the middle flame. There are other opinions that are expressed which require that the menorah in the sanctuary stands from east to west. in which case the western flame receives its name because its place is in the west, whereas according to Maimonides, I hope I'm getting this clear for you, according to Maimonides, it's not that its place is in the west physically as the menorah stands, but that it is facing the Holy of Holies. So this is the question regarding the identity of the western flame. All of this, of course, has nothing to do with the western wall, which is the outer wall, the retaining wall, in the wall around the Temple Mount complex. There is this idea, as I mentioned, we look at the word ma'arav here. The letters that spell this word can actually be seen to stand for the first letters of the verse, Rachel mivaka al baneha. Rachel is crying for her children. And this is a very deep concept that shows a certain relationship, symbolism of Rachel representing the Shekhinah, the divine presence, crying for her children in exile. And there's an idea that the Kabbalists talk about, and perhaps this is not the place to delve into it totally, the significance of this idea, Shekhinah b'ma'arav, that the divine presence is found in the west, referring to the Holy Temple. Moving along to Halacha Tet. Here, Maimonides is going to first give us a description of the ornaments, again, the decorations of the menorah, the cups, the flowers, and the knobs. This too comes from a Braita in Tractate Menachot. So Maimonides tells us in Halacha Tet, Hagvi'im domin lekosot Alexandria. The cups on the menorah itself, the decorative cups that are part of the kishutim, the ornaments on the menorah, they can be likened to goblets of Alexandria. This is some sort of concept which was entirely familiar to the audience to which Maimonides was writing in his time, some sort of famed craftsmanship which came from Alexandria, which was world famous for its crafts and for its art. So these cups in the decorations of the menorah, if we want to understand, he says, what they look like, they can be compared to the goblets of Alexandria, shapihen rachav vishulehen katser, which have a wide opening and narrow sides. Vehakaftorim kimin tapuchim karotiim. The flowers can be likened to the apples of Beirut. This is a bit frustrating for us today, because obviously these are concepts which were very accessible in the time of Maimonides, goblets of Alexandria, and apples of Beirut. And then at least he explains to us, Shehein arukin me'at kibeitza. They are elongated slightly like an egg. In other words, they're oval. They're not so round as they are much more egg-shaped. Sheshnei rasheha kadin. V'haprachim kimo pirchei ha'amudim. And the flowers on the menorah, to what can they be compared? They are like the floral work that we find on columns from the ancient world. They are like the flowers on decorative columns. Shehen kamin ka'ara usfata kfula lachutz, which are somehow somewhat bowl-shaped, with a double embossing, a double lip extending outward. So these are the descriptions that Maimonides gives us of the flowers, cups, and knobs on the menorah. We did not mention, regarding the aspects that are an impediment to the fulfillment of the menorah, we did not mention the height. We mentioned that if the menorah is made out of any metal at all, including gold, it must have the 7 branches, exactly 7. It must have the 7 lamps. We mentioned that if it is made out of gold, then also it has to be made out of 1 kikar. It has to feature the decorations. and it has to be made out of miksha, out of one piece. But there's also the issue of the height of the menorah. And in halacha number 10, Maimonides writes, Gova ha-menorah haya shmona asar tefach. We won't find the height actually written anywhere in the Torah, but we do have this tradition, which Maimonides records here, that the height is 18 tefach. That actually translates into approximately 6 feet. It's the height of an average man, or perhaps a little taller than the average man. And interestingly, as we're going to see, this presents a particular challenge, perhaps, when it comes to this important part of the service of the menorah, the cleansing of the lamps, and in fact the lighting of the lamps. How is this done exactly? Regarding the height, perhaps for a Kohen that's somewhat shorter, perhaps this presents a challenge. So we're going to see how this was dealt with. And now in the next part of Halacha Yud, the 10th Halacha, Maimonides basically gives us a analysis of the structure of the menorah from the bottom up. He tells us regarding these 18 tefachim, as if to say, what I just taught you, Gova ha-menorah haya shmona asar tefach, the height of the menorah was 18 handbreadth. How does that work from the bottom up? So, haraglayim v'haperach shlosha tefachim. If we start from the bottom, the feet and then the flower closest to the feet at the bottom of the stem, that is the first 3 tefach of the menorah. Ushnei tefachim chalak, followed by a space along the main shaft of the menorah, the stem, of 2 tefach, that is, he uses the word chalak, smooth, meaning it is free of any decorations, just uninterrupted space of the gold. V'tefach shabo gavia kaftor v'ferach v'tivchayim chalak, and then that 2 tefach, which is smooth, is followed by another tefach, wherein we have a cup, a button, and a flower, and then again 2 tefach, which is uninterrupted. V'tefach kaftor ushnei kanim yotzin mimenu echad hilach ve'echad hilach. And then we have in the next tefach the button or the knob from which extend the 2 branches going out on either side. V'nimshachim ve'olin keneged gova ha-menorah, continuing up to the height of the central shaft of the menorah. V'tefach chalak, and then again a tefach uninterrupted. And then v'tefach kaftor ushnei kanim yotzim mimenu echad hilach ve'echad hilach. And then again the next set of branches coming out at the next tefach from the kaftor, the button in that tefach, v'nimshachin va'olin keneged gova ha-menorah, and then again continuing up to meet at the top of the central shaft, and then again v'tefach chalak, and then v'tefach kaftor ushnei kanim yotzim mimenu echad hilach ve'echad hilach. Again we have a tefach wherein we have the button and the 2 branches coming out on each side, v'nimshachin va'olin keneged gova ha-menorah, and then they go up to the top, v'tifachayim chalak, and then again 2 tefach smooth. Nishtairu shlosha tefachim, and then we have the final 3 tefach, shabahen shlosha gvi'im kaftor v'ferach, the final 3 tefach in which we have the remaining 3 cups, knobs, and flowers. There's actually some degree of complexity that we could mention here regarding the view of Rashi and exactly where these ornaments are placed, and do the branches come out straight from the knobs, or do they come out below? But I'm going to actually skip over that for now and continue with the next halacha. Halacha Yud Aleph tells us that there was the language of Maimonides actually is a stone. Ve'even hayata lefnei ha-menorah. There was a stone placed before the menorah, uba shalosh ma'alot, which featured 3 levels. She'aleha kohen omed umetiv et hanerot. And upon this stone, the kohen would stand and facilitate the service of the improvement of the lamps. the cleansing and the rekindling of the lamps. In other words, Maimonides is teaching us there were steps. He calls it an even, a stone with levels. He means there was a step of 3 levels in front of the menorah. Here too, this concept, the concept of the stairs, the steps in front of the menorah, is not mentioned specifically in the Torah. This too is a Mishnah that we have in tractates Tamid. We can see a reference to it as well in Masechet Menachot. And there on the Mishnah, Maimonides explains to us that because the menorah is rather high, the stairs would enable the Kohen to see to the lamps easier. Actually, there is another halachic work which considers this entire concept and gives us another explanation of the necessity of the steps, which is really very intriguing and important for us to understand. You see, if the menorah is 18 tefachim high, and you have a man who's fairly tall, perhaps average height, he would really be able to stand on the floor of the sanctuary and reach up to improve the lights of the menorah. And again, this service, the hatava, the improvement. Hatava, the root of the word is tov, good or better or betterment, part of the daily service every day in the temple at the time that the morning offering is being attended to, is that there is work that needs to be done inside the sanctuary on the menorah. And we're going to discuss what is this concept of hatava. Is it actually kindling the lights? Is it just a cleansing of the buildup of the charcoal and the wick that was already consumed from yesterday? Perhaps there's some oil left over. It has to be prepared for the next time that it's going to be lit. So there's a question we're going to see about in detail exactly what is this hatava. But in any event, very important part of the service. So the Kohen is going to be standing on the ground, and it's a bit higher than him, and he can reach up perhaps with a little bit of difficulty, and he can take care of it. However, there is a very unique halacha regarding the Kohen Gadol. And the Kohen Gadol may also choose to attend to the menorah himself. Now the Kohen Gadol, you will recall, wears 8 garments in addition to the 4 white garments that are worn by the Kohen Hediot, the ordinary priest. The Kohen Gadol wears additional 4 garments. These are referred to as the golden garments, the choshen and the ephod and the blue robe. One of the garments that the Kohen Gadol is wearing is the tzitz, which is a gold plate that is worn across his forehead from ear to ear, and it's tied around the back of his head with a thread of the sky blue. And upon this golden crown is embossed the words Kodesh Lashem, holiness unto the Lord, to Hashem. And there is a particular halacha regarding the Kohen Gadol that he is never allowed to raise his arms above the tzitz upon his own forehead. He's never allowed to raise his arms above the word of Hashem, Hashem's name, that appears upon his own forehead. And thus, the stairs are actually very important for the Kohen Gadol. You see, for the Kohen Hediot, it's okay, maybe it's just a little bit easier because he's really reaching. But for the Kohen Gadol, if he is doing the service of the menorah and he is wearing the tzitz on his forehead, that would be very problematic because he is never allowed to raise his arm above the level of Hashem's name on his own forehead. And thus, the stairs would facilitate him being able to be at eye level, to be able to attend to the flames of the menorah without raising his hands above the level of the tzitz, which is very, very important. So, again, ve'even hayta lefnei hamenorah, there was a stone before the menorah, uba shalosh ma'alot, with 3 steps, sha'aleha kohen omed, upon these steps the Kohen would stand, umetiv et hanerot, and see to the improvement of the lamps. And we're going to be speaking in much more detail about what exactly this entails. Umaniach aleha Klei shamna umalkacheha umachtoteha bishat hatava. And Maimonides tells us that at the time that the Kohen is attending to the service of the lamps, he enters into the sanctuary carrying the tools that we have learned about previously. The kuz, this is kind of like this basin, and the tongs and the ash pans, which he uses in order to refresh the wicks, to change the wicks, and to cleanse any buildup and to take away the unused oil. So he comes into the sanctuary with these tools. He places the tool down upon the step in the midst of the service and takes those aspects of the tools that he needs as he is attending to the Hatava. And we're going to see exactly why I mentioned, there's a question, but exactly what does this entail? There is Rambam's interpretation and Rashi. When is this done exactly? This important part of the service. We know that the menorah burns at night. When is exactly its time of lighting? And who does this service of the improving of the lamps and when? We're going to be learning all about this as we continue to learn about the menorah. The menorah is the symbol of the light of the Holy Temple, the light of the Divine Presence. Soon we're going to be learning about the table of the showbread. Also an aspect of the Divine Presence, the light to Israel and the light to the nations.